recording live from Fairfax.
All right, I'm on too.
What's up, fellas? I just want to congratulate you guys and ourselves for finishing this album that took over a year to make.
Woohoo!
Kind of didn't expect it to take that long, but
Yeah, it's nice to have it done.
absolutely. I enjoyed the process too. I mean, the fact that we were able to record at Tiny Telephone, in San Francisco, and all analog, record to tape, through a real console, and the fact that that place is gone now and it's going away. I feel pretty lucky that we got kind of in under the wire.
I think the first time I was actually ever there was when we did the drifting demo. Right. I guess that was close to like 3 years ago, right?
Yep.
And I felt really lucky. I did a lot of sessions there after that. It was really fun. So I got kind of spoiled listening to music that way.
Nice.
I'm pretty grateful. So you guys have already heard the first track. That's the first track, North Green Farm Road, on our new album, our second album, the sophomore effort, called Stay in the Circle. And I hope you liked it. And we wanted to make a video to kind of introduce the album and let you guys hear it and give us a chance to kind of talk and reflect. And hopefully you want to hear what we have to say. At this point, we've been in quarantine for it's close to 3 months.
Yeah.
So
11 weeks, I think. Yeah.
11 weeks. How are you guys doing with all that?
Oh boy.
Tell me about your day to day.
I don't think we have enough time.
Well,
Sleeping in a little more, which is nice. One thing music related that's been good is one of my older drum teacher that I used to take lessons with. At 2:30 every day, he's got a little drum therapy session where he does a Zoom meeting. We all jump in on this call, and for 5 minutes, we just focus on some exercise that we're working on. The exercise I've been working on lately is I'm taking the first 2 bars of US Drag from Missing Persons, and I'm swapping out the hi-hat pattern with my left foot. So instead of using the right hand in the hi-hat, I'm using my left foot in the hi-hat pedal. So that's been cool. And I'm working later too.
I think for me, the probably the most striking thing about the 3 months of quarantine is the fact that I don't think I've put pants on in 3 months. I mean, definitely not jeans. I think pajama pants. So I guess depending on how you look at it, that counts or not. But yeah, no pants for 3 months. I've pretty much been in shorts or pajamas. And I was talking to my wife about it the other day. I don't know if I'm going to be able to go back to pants ever. I think that's kind of one of the problems, after you get that elastic waistband comfort, it's kind of like, I feel like I can't think. I'm kind of cramped,
That's funny. I'm totally the opposite. I have to get dressed every day. Like from day one, I knew that if I started doing sweatpants thing, that it would just be downhill from there for me. Just knowing my personality, I'll just start to go like. So I've been like Mr. Rogers every day. I get up every morning, put on like a full pair of pants and a shirt and everything.
That's good.
But I've been off. I've been off work for 2 months. And my job, my project, literally finished on the 13th of March, which was the day that everything shut down. Wow. So I was off for 2 months.
Friday the 13th.
Yeah, and so it was
spiritual people.
Never thought of it.
It was great for me because just having a lot of time with the family, and just I'd spent a long road trip for almost 3 months in LA. So being back home with the family was really crucial time for me, and also to be able to finish this album too. I mean, I thought we were close to finish, but I just needed to really like sink my teeth in and finish mixing it and mastering and all that stuff, and finish the overdubs.
Well, I'm proud to say I don't own any such clothing, so I have to get dressed every day anyway. But actually, I also have left my alarm on, and I get up at 5:30 still every day, and I work more now than I did before. Yeah. I would say my job is just crazier.
Well, should we talk about some of the songs? Should we just go?
Yeah.
Do you guys want to go just song by song and talk about them?
Let's do it.
I think that sounds good.
Well, North Dream Farm Road was. We were doing some overdubs, and Alex and I just threw up a mic and just started kind of riffing. And I had sort of had sort of an idea of what the song was. I had the song title, actually. That's all I had. I mean, the times we've driven out to Inverness to go to the beach, and we always passed that North Dream Farm Road sign, and it always just seemed like this great hippie, name for a street, and it always caught my attention, and so it's been stuck in my brain for a long time, and I'd been listening to a lot of John Hammond Jr., like the kind of white blues guy, for some reason lately, and so I was sort of in that kind of little bit of a bluesy mode, and it sort of kind of came out that way. And I borrowed the chord changes from Miles Davis, Freddie Freeloader, but yeah, that kind of came out sort of quick, and then I sort of figured out the lyrics after that, and then sent it to you guys. And
Why not South Dream Farm Road?
we could have done a part 2.
Is there a South Dream Farm Road?
There is, yeah.
There is, yeah.
Yeah, there's both. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, that track for me, I think, is really an example of what has become over the last few years kind of one of my favorite ways to make music, and definitely my favorite way to record, which is at home, where I can just kind of like not feel any time constraint and just sit and listen to it and just do like 50 takes of something until it gets, what I think sounds just right. And that's kind of what I did on this. Pascal sent me that track, and just started layering over it. And,
It's funny that you do a lot of takes, because you're typically a guy who can just nail it live in the studio, both on stage and when we're recording. We do a lot of improvisation in the studio when we're recording basic tracks. It's interesting that you when you're overdubbing, that you would go over it so many times.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing. I mean, I don't know what your guys' approach is, but we always, like when I was growing up, I would always hear this kind of basic conversation about how when the record, and how a lot of bands, the record never sounded like the concert. And it was always mentioned in a way that was like a negative. And I get that, because I think there are a lot of bands that I've heard who are great live and somewhat mediocre in the studio, or maybe not mediocre, but that the recordings don't always capture kind of the magic, right, that happens live. And I just never have subscribed to that approach. I feel like they're two completely different things. As a result, I feel like there just has to be, for me at least, a very different approach. And, I like that. It's fun for me, to sort of be able to do it both ways.
It's sort of like painting. I mean, you're sort of doing these layers.
Yeah.
Whereas like as opposed to playing live, where it just sort of happens one time and then that's it. And I think the original idea of recording was to capture a performance, but then at some point, I guess in the '60s, it became with multi-tracking, and became more about creating this sort of sound collage. And I always think about that when. For me, the number one rule of recording and recording music is to make it like fun to listen to, to make it interesting. Yeah. I'm always looking for twists and turns, and making something that's, if I was listening to this, not get bored,
Yeah. Well, I think this record for me was a lot of fun, and I think it kind of comes across in all the tracks, which kind of reminds me, we should talk about the first track on the album, Stay in the Circle. Now, Pascal, maybe you want to introduce this song before we listen to it.
Well, it's funny. I was just listening to it yesterday, and it's pretty bonkers. I mean, there's not really. I don't think I've ever heard a song that sounds like Eddie Money meets like '70s prog or something. I mean, that guitar solo section's pretty out there. I mean, it's really long. It's a really long guitar. There's like 3 guitar solos, distinct guitar solos, and it's
like Edgar Winter.
totally has that Frankenstein vibe to it for sure. Yeah. And it's just sort of funny. And the great thing about being sort of an unknown band, or a band that's like that's obscure or whatever, we have no constraints. We can do whatever we want. So there's no. I mean, I feel like in previous projects, I've always felt like, well, just in case we ever get, hit the big time, we should conform to some kind of pop, 3-minute, 3.5-minute song or whatever, just in case, And I really feel like with this thing, it's like we can really just do whatever we want, and it's just fun. That's the whole point. And that's kind of that's why I was like happy to have a ridiculously long guitar solo as the opening track of the album. I even cut it down. It used to be longer. I cut it down for length.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites to record too. It took forever for me to come up with the basic part to that song, and then I remember I played the basic part only forever before I finally thought of a second part. So it was like just one of those songs that took months and months for me to come up with a part that felt right and that actually made it feel like a song.
Yeah, that was an old riff that's been kicking around for years, even before we got together. It was nice that it finally turned into a song.
So what do you say? Should we give it a listen?
Yeah, hit play.
All right. All right.
Well, that sounded great, didn't it?
I loved it. It went by too quickly.
It went by like a whisper in the night.
Oh.
King of the segue.
Well done.
So yeah, the next track, Whisper in the Night, I think we should talk about that a little bit too. That was one of the ones I wrote for this, and I think right in the probably weeks leading up to when we were talking about recording, I wrote that and we just kind of worked it out. And so I still feel like that was one of the ones that was felt fairly new to me in the studio.
I like on that one how there's a contrast vocally because now Charlie's stepping up and singing, and I think that helps kind of show how the roles within the band are evolving. Speaking of roles, that is my wooden bongo debut on that song.
It's probably the only song where I refuse to do anything other than play the root note, right? Like it's like when Pascal and I first talked about my playing music with him and stuff like that, I was kind of like, I just want to be as noodly as possible. And this is like a song where I'm just like absolutely the opposite. So it's super fun for me.
Yeah.
Bass,
well,
super solid rhythm section there.
The bass really anchors that song. I mean, I pushed the bass in the mix because it has that kind of another one that bites the dust where it kind of really drives the song.
That sort of late 70s and 80s ZZ Top was kind of definitely on my mind when I was working that up. And then when we were working that up too, at the time, I remember seeing those videos for off of Eliminator, right?
Yeah.
And
legs,
and it was all just, I mean, at the time I remember thinking, I don't know about this. This is pretty cheeseball. But as the years have passed, I've just learned to love it a lot more. And, it was definitely on my mind. So I'm glad that I think that bass line really captured, exactly what I was, hearing in my head with the song.
Now, I have a question for you, Charlie. When you're writing a song, do you hear the whole arrangement in your head, like as if it's a song, or do you kind of start with the lyrics, or how do you usually write stuff?
I always start with guitar riffs.
So it came from a riff.
Yeah, I mean, when I started writing, was always guitar first, and kind of maybe hum along and kind of figure out like a melody line, and then if I had a subject matter in my mind, that would kind of carry through to the playing, but definitely no more than that sort of idea of kind of what the song I thought was going to be about. The lyrics were always the last piece of the puzzle for me. I'd never written a song like that before. I mean, you guys know that, I play 1-4-5 songs, like country sort of Americana stuff. So this was fun. This was fun for me. I had to really show a lot of restraint because I just got a synth pedal, which I know I've talked about endlessly with you guys, but it's the Maris Enzo, and I mean, I love it. It definitely took a lot of restraint not to use it on everything, but this was definitely one where I felt like, all right, let's just kind of put it to the test and see what it can do. And so I think
Absolutely.
I know it made it onto the solo, part of the solo section for Stay in the Circle,
Yeah.
but I know in Whisper in the Night, sort of during the big jam at the end, I put it in polyphonic mode, and you could just kind of pad out chords like this and adjust the rise and the sustain of it and everything like that. And there's a ring modulator you can sort of put on it and everything, and just kind of had set it so that these kind of chords would bloom in the background. And I always thought of the Peter Gabriel song, Sledgehammer, right? At the end of that,
nice.
There's kind of a similar song, and that's kind of, for that part, what I wanted to kind of happen there. So I'm glad that made it on the record too.
Nice.
Each song does have a little bit of a different style, but there's a cohesion to it. But I mean, we have like a full-on country song with white lines, and we have our sort of Bob Dylan ripoff. We have, I mean, it's pretty all over the place.
To me, that's my wheelhouse. I love that we mix it up the way we do.
Well, each song seems to have a personality on this album too, which I think is good. That doesn't feel like there's any filler or stuff that we kind of just put in to fill up the album.
Yeah.
I hope we can live up to it for the next one.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think let's hear it. Let's hear Whisper in the Night.
All right, rock it.
That was great.
Oh man,
that was really great.
That just like, woo! It's like hearing it for the first time.
It flew by again. What is that?
It's nice to take a break.
6-minute song.
And listen
It
to
felt
it
like
again.
I know, it's crazy. I kept imagining that little alien from TV Dinners, the TV Dinners video.
Oh yeah.
Totally.
we need to.
That's Afterburner era now, right? That's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that's like
Rough Boy,
TV
baby.
Dinners. Yeah.
I love that album, but
a
that's
long-
an album that you listen back, and I feel like if something comes up on a playlist, you get this really full sound, and then all of a sudden, whatever track from Afterburner comes in, and it's like piercingly high end, and it's like there's just nothing on the bottom.
Yeah. Actually, I think I'm wrong. Afterburner has Sleeping Bag.
Right.
Sleeping Bag.
I think TV Dinner is on Eliminator.
Oh, is it really?
I think
Oh,
so.
okay.
I get those two mixed up sometimes too.
Yeah, me too.
That's funny.
All right, the next song is Century Window, and I don't know, Pascal, tell us about it.
I'd say Century Window is the song where I probably most of my songs lyrically are usually kind of just sort of nonsense. I mean, the way that I write a song is I just sort of I hear it in my head as if I tuned into the radio. That's the way songs come to me. They come fully formed. Like it sounds like a song that already exists, and I'm just trying to kind of emulate it. And it usually means like total gibberish, like singing. It's like I might have one or two words, but the way that I write is I start recording that into my phone, and I do it over and over and over again, and I'll do 30 or 40 recordings into my phone, and then I bring it to band practice and do the same thing, and I record every band practice, and I listen back to the band practices in my car, and then I start hearing words by accident, that I'm singing, and some of it's stream of consciousness, and some of them are actual words, but a lot of it's just just sounds that sound like words, and I start piecing together lyrics from that. So some of my songs are sort of like all over the place, but this is the one where I actually had a concept to it. The century window is it's a window of time. It's a 100-year window of time that ideally we get to have in this existence. If you're lucky, you get to you get a 100-year window of existence, and it's sort of just this amazing thing that we all happen to be sharing this little window together. So it's the song I'm probably the most proud of as far as like actually having a concept and writing lyrics that sort of make sense to me.
Yeah, for me, I remember when we were writing this tune, I was doing a lot of running in the headlands at the time, and I could never get this song out of my head when I was running. And it's also, I think, the time when Charlie, you hooked up with a pedal steel, and the fact that the pedal steel in it is just is pretty amazing as well. And I agree with you, Pascal. Like the meaning behind it, I hope we end up doing a video for it, kind of expressing some of those lyrics.
Thanks, man.
This is one of my favorite songs on the record, and it's kind of one of those that, as it's evolved, even in the recording process, every time I hear it, I like even more things about it that I didn't hear. And it has ambiance, but it also still has this like forward motion that I think is necessary, because sometimes you get these, like, I feel like that's the danger of a slower song, is it drags, and this one, it doesn't. It really, like, it's almost got like if Pink Floyd made a country album is how I like to think of it,
Yeah. Well, we also switched from major to minor for that E chord. So it gave it that kind of that Pink Floyd kind of feel to it.
Right.
I'll remind you, Pink Floyd did do country music on the Zabriskie Point soundtrack.
Oh, okay.
I know that was definitely my favorite guitar solo that I cut for the whole record, was that guitar solo.
Nice. Wow.
And I think that's the one too, right, where there's two guitar solos, and at one point they pan to each side, and so it's like you're hearing two different takes, and that was fun for me.
Which is two Charlies, but we do that live, where we try and we'll take solos back and forth, and then we'll start kind of interacting and sort of doing a sort of a call and response thing, or even I'll try and imitate what you're doing at the same time, that kind of thing.
Love that.
My pretty much de facto tone, which is my Strat and my deluxe reverb and the MXR Phase 90 into the Klon, just as kind of like a bass tone.
It's a great sound. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, I remember in particular on that song, the first version of the solo you sent me was very pretty but sort of subdued. It was almost too tasteful, and I said, this is awesome, but I know you've got that fire, and I encouraged you to try and to come out swinging a little bit, and you did. And the version that you sent the second time was what we ended up with, and then the second one that comes in later was the original one that you sent.
Right. I think I switched amps too. I had been tracking most everything through Pro Reverb, and it's just got like this really beautiful, big piano-like kind of clean sound. But the deluxe is just, it's so much brighter, and it cuts a little better. That I think it's perfect for guitar solos.
A lot of Fenders on this recording.
Yeah, right. Four Fenders, right? Total. You use a Bassman, right?
Yeah, Bassman 100. Yeah.
A Bassman, a Vibrolux, a Deluxe, and a Pro Reverb. Well, for all the nerds out there, this is what they want to know.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
This is what I want to know.
All right.
Let's hear the song.
Hit play. man, that was just whoo, woo.
Invigorating. Which brings us to Easy Out. This is my favorite song to play, just start to finish. It's just, I mean, I like everything about it. Yeah, and I feel like it definitely morphs quite a bit, which I think is really fun. It's kind of like, I feel like with this one, it's maybe more so than any song on the album. It's really a journey, you know? Yeah. And I hear all that because there's definitely the John Fogerty kind of thing that I hear. And then there's some Dire Straits kind of elements in there too. And then there's the big sort of jam section in the middle, which, I mean, for me, is all Lost Sailor Saint of Circumstance, which is like one of my all-time favorites. At least that's what I was trying to kind of channel.
You know, I was, as you guys remember, I was the one that was, I was so anti the whole halftime breakdown guitar solo, but now it's like I can't imagine the song without it, you know.
Nice.
Right.
But that breakdown to me, it's so funny because I grew up, my favorite, you know, of all time music was Ozzy, you know, and that breakdown to me is a classic Ozzy bridge.
Yeah.
With the vocals.
You gotta believe in foolish miracles.
Exactly.
Exactly.
How you play the game.
It goes halftime with the doubled vocals. I mean, it's just straight up Ozzy Osbourne.
Totally. Yeah, that's cool.
That's funny. I've never thought of any of these things in relation to this song except for Lost Sailor Saint of Circumstance.
Nice.
I remember you putting this song forward in a rehearsal kind of after we'd stopped playing that Flaming Groovies song. And so for me, I always kept that vibe in this song, and I like the bass line for me is just like straight power pop mostly.
Nice.
Until it gets to that dead zone.
My friend Bart Davenport had posted on Facebook. He said that the most yacht rock word to use in song lyrics is the word minute. You know, like minute by minute, you know. And that stuck in my head. And when I was writing lyrics for this, I was kind of in that yacht rock mode. And that's why, you know, that's why I say, you know, talking a million miles a minute. It was like I was like intentionally trying to put that word into the lyrics.
That's amazing.
That's funny.
For yacht rock cred.
Yeah, totally.
To me, the thing that really strikes me more than anything about the actual result of the song is I feel like this is a perfect example to me of how really good arranging and arrangements can, you know, really propel a song. And I feel like one thing that we all kind of do very well on this is occupy the perfect amount of space and kind of listen to everybody else. And I feel like much like a machine sort of working, this song kind of, all the parts really work together very nicely. And, you know, there's no parts that kind of, to me, sound too crowded or anything like that. And I know guitar wise, one thing for me that always kind of is at the very front of my mind when I'm playing with another guitar player, and it's not just me, is how to kind of make the two guitar parts gel. I know for me, my whole inspiration was how do I work through these changes in a way that sort of complements your guitar playing, Pascal, without kind of doing the same thing or taking over, just kind of how do I get them to work together? And for me, this was like a really big success at that.
Well, you're the master of that,
really.
You know, because it goes back to the playing guitar and singing at the same time, which I feel like I can do, but I'm somewhat limited. You know, I can't devote my full attention to playing guitar when I'm singing, you know. So oftentimes I'm playing, you know, open position chords, but I'll just be playing maybe just one or two strings at a time.
Right.
Know, because I don't like to fill up the space too much, you know, otherwise it gets really crowded when you have so many notes playing at the same time, you know. And you're the master at weaving around what I'm doing. That really helps, you know.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's an effort I make when I was in school in the music program at UC Santa Cruz. We had this great instructor, Ray Brown was his name, not the bass player. He's a trumpet.
I was going to say.
No, not the bass player, the trumpet player. And we took this. I remember one spring there. I feel like it was probably the best semester of school that I could have ever imagined, because at UC Santa Cruz, you take 3 classes at a time. and they'd be a little more in depth, and it would end up being a pretty full week. But I remember the 3 classes that I was taking was jazz improv, music of the Grateful Dead, which was a class, and the history of the labor movement in the U.S. And
Wow.
I mean, it was awesome. It was really just like, it was really like amazing. But the jazz improv class, the way it happened was we would all sort of sit around the classroom on these risers with our instruments, and there must have been 25 of us, and it was the advanced jazz improv class. So this guy, Ray Brown, was, I mean, you know, his ears were amazing, and he'd sit there, you'd do something like you'd play rhythm changes or something, you'd go around the room and everybody would, you know, take a chorus, and he'd stand there and he'd get right up in your face and come right up and just stare at your playing, like, and with like this intensity in his eyes, you feel like he could at any moment rip your guitar out of your hands. And even though he was a trumpet player, probably do a much better job than he could ever do. And he'd be really critical, you know, he'd sit there and he'd be like, he's like, that's a C sharp, it should be a C natural. And I mean, he would hear everything. And it was really kind of, I mean, it was like boot camp, you know. And one thing that he said, bringing it back to the song, and maybe we should edit all this out later, is that is that he was like, you know, one thing he used to say over and over that got ingrained in my head is like, if you're a guitar player, you should never play a root. He's like, everything should be rootless voicings. He's like, you've got a bass player, you've got a piano player, the root is their territory. And he's like, you don't need to play it, you shouldn't play it. And he's like, in fact, it's off limits. And
nice.
For me as a guitar player, that was really helpful, because it really taught me how to play inversions and rootless voicings all the way up the neck, which in a context of like the music we're doing now, I think it is really nice, because all of a sudden I feel like I can do that without worrying about, you know, stepping on anybody's toes. And I feel like when you're a musician, it's kind of like definitely a block to sometimes have that consciousness of what is he playing, and what is he playing, so then what can I play? Whereas if it's just kind of automatic, it kind of allows you to kind of get to those inspired moments a little more quickly, kind of takes your mind off things, allow you to detach a little bit. And
yeah, it's funny, all the complexity of the parts I agree with, and the space that we all give it is really nice. For me, it was really hard to come up with a part that flowed through all of that well. And so it's actually one of the rare songs for me in this group where my part is pretty much invariant. I never really play that one any differently from time to time. You know, I have like maybe a bar or two where I might like switch up a fill or something, but you know what I mean? It's like a part I have to like, it's almost like a path. Once I started, I just have to like go through it, or otherwise it's, there's like hedges on either side made of guitars.
You know, the guitar intro for me is straight up one of my favorite guitarists of all time is Johnny Marr from the Smiths, and so that part really is an homage to Johnny Marr. Just that kind of bold, bright, sort of chiming little kind of double stops in the guitar.
Nice.
Yeah, I love it. It's a great intro, and I think that was another one that I feel like went through quite a few iterations before we finally got this. And I mean, I give you guys a lot of credit too for. I mean, I feel like it's the hardest song on the album. Like, it's hard to play, you know. It's definitely complex.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
I think,
I fuck up the intro every time, just about, but I'll get it one of these days. But you know, Diego kept pushing for making it shorter and shorter, because it used to be really long. I used to have a whole part of the bridge section in there, and then Diego kept asking us to shorten it, and then even like in the last, even after we recorded it, we shortened it, and then we shortened it again, and now it's down to just a tiny little bit, but I think it's just right now. It's just perfect.
Yeah,
that was the power pop influence. So it's like we really just got to get into it, you know.
Let's get there. Yeah, it makes sense. Absolutely.
Should we give it a listen?
Hell yeah.
let's hear it.
Let's hear it.
So
Nice.
that brings us now officially if I'm in the right spot this time, to side
Yeah.
B with Just Like Bob Dylan's Blues, which is a song I mentioned before. We've been kind of kicking around for a long time since, I mean, as long as we've been playing. I remember, Pascal, I remember playing that song with you before we had even had any songs, when it was just kind of like this idea of, hey, let's maybe try some original songs and not just kind of have a Thursday night jam session.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and to be honest, I never really meant it to be a song that we would record. I mean, it was always sort of a little bit of a goof, because it was literally taking the pattern from a Bob Dylan song, and then trying to make a new song out of it, which is why I call it Just Like Bob Dylan's Blues. I feel like I'm at least owning up to the fact that it's a complete lift.
Well, I really struggled with this song. I had a hard time finding a tone, and I remember when we cut it at Tiny Telephone, going through quite a few different sounds before I found one that I thought worked. And this was definitely for me a real departure from the rest of the album, in the sense that I felt really like I had my parts really hammered out and kind of ready to go. I knew what I was doing on every song, and this was kind of one where I was kind of just like, man, I don't know what to do, and it's a blues. I mean, I feel like this is kind of something that, I mean, one of the first kind of riffs I ever learned on guitar was that kind of Robert Johnson do 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 kind of thing. And I mean, this is definitely has that at its roots, and it was like the hardest thing for me to play on the whole album, I think.
Huh. Funny.
Yeah, I really had to streamline in the end, I had to really streamline my own playing. And I think the whole rhythm track is just thirds and sevenths, and that's all. It's just two notes, and that's it.
Well, and this is a song that when we play it live, there's a lot of back and forth. I mean, this song can turn into, a 13-minute long song sometimes, between the back and forth, which is a blast live, depending on the energy when we play it.
Yeah.
Let's give it a listen.
Let's give it a listen.
So now we're moving into side B. If you burned one down right before you put the album on, by this time you're kind of ready for a change of pace, and so we put a cover song on there. And we had a cover song on our first album, and there's a cover song on this one. And I don't know, maybe you guys want to talk about that a little bit.
Well, yeah, it's a song by a group called Big Thief, group out of Brooklyn. Young millennial group, we're kind of like old dads, but I kind of I like doing covers that are not necessarily in the same genre that we play, so we can kind of put our own sort of stamp on it, And I always loved that stuff. From the first time I heard it, I was like, oh, this sounds like a classic song, and I feel like it fits our style almost more than that song fits the rest of that band's style.
Wow.
Right.
If that makes any sense, because the rest of their repertoire is not really like in that sort of. It almost has like a bar rock kind of vibe to it,
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. No, and I didn't know much about Big Thief until you brought that song into the band, and I've got a ton of respect for that band now, and have listened and purchased all their albums that they've released since. So, and my whole family digs that band actually. So,
yeah, I'd never heard of that band. I never heard any of their music until we started playing the song. And to be honest, I don't think I ever even listened to the original version of the song until after we had recorded ours. So I'm happy I didn't, because I probably would have ripped it off, like in my own playing a little more than I did if I'd had their version kind of in my head. So yeah, I definitely think we kind of put our own mark on that, and I think it came out great.
Yeah,
I want to play.
I sometimes forget that it's not our song.
And for the feel for that song, I'm a huge fan of a hip hop producer called JD or J Dilla, depending on when you got into him. And he's got kind of this round bounce in a lot of his programming, but to slow it down to what that tempo is for that song was a little bit of a challenge. But I almost feel like you could have some of his, if you could get some, what do they call, a cappella of some of his bands or some of his artists flowing over it, and you stripped out Pascal's vocals, you could probably put him over that song.
It's almost like a halftime shuffle kind of thing, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and if you remember, we used to play it a little bit more straight, and then I suggested making it even more of a halftime shuffle, like literally about 5 minutes before we tracked it.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
So I apologize for that, Alex. Kind of putting you through a little bit of a.
No, but you helped out because that was the song where you did the tambourine for.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, you gave it that nice. Again, you helped emphasize that J Dilla kind of swing to it. So props to you for being able to play a tambourine in that fashion.
Yeah.
Should we give it a listen?
It was also my mandolin debut too. I always wanted to have
nice.
mandolin
Yeah, that's
in there.
right.
And so I got a mandolin for Christmas from Lizzie, from my wife, who's walking across the screen right now. That's her. good timing. It's been hanging on the wall for a couple years now, and so I picked it up and I learned to play mandolin just well enough to play "Masterpiece" by Big Thief.
Awesome.
On there.
Yeah, this was my in my own playing. This was my homage to Bob Weir. If anyone else listens to the Grateful Dead, I know you guys do. When you listen to some like late '70s, early '80s versions of "They Love Each Other," all kind of Bob Weir does in that is he kind of hits the harmonics up at the 12th fret and the 5th fret and lets them ring as if it's just kind of a sustaining chord. And I mean, we play it in G, so it seemed like the perfect kind of opportunity.
Right.
I've never done that before in a song, and it's really fun. I mean, it's one of those things that I could definitely easily overuse. And it's like it's definitely I feel like my mantra in this band for most of your songs, Pascal, is because you're such a great guitar player, and I want to compliment that. Is like, what would Bob Weir do in this situation? Tonally and rhythmically too. So this was one of those.
WWBWD.
Yeah.
Get your shirt made.
Well, let's hear it.
Sounded good. Nice job, guys.
Yep.
Sounded great.
Yeah, and hopefully people can see the difference between the two. or hear the difference between, or the strong difference between the two.
Yeah.
Listen to it. What do we got next?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Huh?
Can you hear me now?
I can.
I wanted to call the song "Can You Hear Me Now," but just that Verizon commercial.
Yeah.
I didn't want
Jared.
to.
Is it Jared? No.
That's
It's like
Subway.
there's a licensing opportunity. There's a real licensing opportunity here.
That's right.
I hope Verizon picks up on
Get some free phones.
opportunity. Yep.
And this, believe it or not, is another tune that I sing a lot in my head when I'm out running on the trails.
Nice.
This is one that's been kicking around for me for a long time in different forms, and it's also the one that I struggled with, to be honest, and the recording, the mixing, even to the very end. This one took more effort than any of the other ones probably combined, just to get the sound I was kind of hearing in my head, which was sort of America, Crosby, Stills, and Nash meets like Riders on the Storm, like that kind of riding through the desert in the pouring rain kind of sound.
Yeah, I think it came out great. I remember this is probably the song for me. I spent the most time at home doing overdubs for and just kind of trying my best to help build the tracks a little more. And then I think I ended up doing like tremolo guitar and pedal steel and melodica, guitar solos, and
It definitely has the most layers out of all the songs. Has the most overdubs, and we had always done a little bit of a drone in the beginning of that song, and then Diego, can you talk a little bit about your process to create that intro part?
Yeah, sure. It's funny because, of course, I don't think I use a single pedal on this recording otherwise. But in most of my musical contexts, I use too many pedals. And part of what I've figured out how to do over the years, from inspiration from Pink Floyd and then from this guy David Allen from a 70s band called Gong, that's a really great kind of jazzy prog band, is a technique he calls glissando, which is where you take a slide kind of thing and you use it to rub the strings. And so the unique thing about it versus a slide is that it's like a slide and a bow at the same time. Right. So the thing you're rubbing actually generates the tone as well as being where you're fretting. So it's the note you're playing as well, right? So I figured out how to do this on bass, and yeah, it seemed like we like to do this droney, pillowy opening, so I just kind of thought I should try and do a glissando drone for it, which is something I always love to do.
Now the actual thing that you use is like a piece of scrap metal, right? I don't want to give away your trade secrets, but
yeah, it's actually it's the leg of a chair, technically. you know those chairs that are like that are on a four-legged cross-like base and that can like swivel and like wobble, and they're usually like padded and shit. They were popular in the late 80s. I had one in a house I lived in Washington, and it broke under someone one day, and I like literally pulled this thing out from under there and was like, hey, this looks pretty useful, and kept it, and I've had it ever since then. This was like
that's amazing.
97, 98. So
and you use that a lot in other music too, like in other groups you play in, right?
I use it a lot, yeah. Like I said, the inspiration was Pink Floyd. If you've ever seen Pink Floyd live at Pompeii, first of all, David Gilmour does it on guitar. You'll do these seagull kind of sounds with the slide and the volume pedal or volume knob on the guitar. But in the second part of Echoes, when they come back, Roger Waters is actually doing it on bass. He has a giant slide and he's rubbing the strings with a tiny bit of delay on, and it makes this kind of oceanic sound that is how the whole second half of Echoes starts up. So I started trying it with various things. A slide I find is too smooth for bass strings, right? So you have to really figure out what to use for each type of instrument, Guitarists that I see do it nowadays almost always use the whammy bar. They just pull it out of the guitar and then use the whammy bar itself. But yeah, for bass you need something that can like kind of move the strings a bit more. So this larger object worked well. And yeah, started copying Pink Floyd first, and then actually, this is a digression and we don't need to keep it, but I have since then opened for 2 members of Gong.
Oh, nice.
When I found my first found my first Gong album, I was just like, holy shit, I know I listen to so much music right now that just like literally all comes from this. And I just stopped listening to tons of 90s and 80s psych bands because I found Gong basically. And
The source.
the source, right? Yeah. And these sailing, singing glissando guitar parts really, really called to me and really honed my, ability to play a melody with this process, right? Like the Roger Waters approach is pretty like atonal, right? And to like actually have it be a melodic process is pretty different. And I got to open for David Allen once, and so I asked him, I was like, hey, where did you get this technique? And his answer, I'm not kidding, was, oh, well, I saw Syd Barrett do it in 1968 in London.
Wow.
Wow.
And I was all like, well, that's where Roger Waters also got it from, obviously. So yeah, all of us owe this technique to Syd Barrett, ultimately. And then I got to open later on for the other guitarist in Gong, Steve Hillage. And he actually complimented my glissando after the show.
Nice.
Nice.
Just a peak experience.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. It's huge.
So after the drone, it's yet again another sort of big melody that it opens with, and that melody came to me when I was driving my car, and it always reminds me of the beginning of MASH. Ba, 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 ba. It's like that really.
Oh, wow,
It's like the saddest, most melancholy, like horn.
Yeah.
Ba, da, ba, ba, ba. And like
Suicide is painless.
Exactly, suicide is painless. Which if you watch the film version, you get to hear the lyrics.
Oof, so dark.
As I watch the morning fog. Yeah, it's really dark. But our melody is ba-da, ba-da, ba-da. And I always imagined like, ba-da, da, 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 da. So I did it.
Nice.
I did it with
That's
the
great.
fuzz guitar, and then it's doubled, with other instruments, with the melodica in there.
Yeah.
Should we give it a listen?
Hell yeah. So
Remember that?
One thing about this song, "Break My Heart," is that it came together so fast. Like we almost played it the way we play it now, like the second time we ever played it together, as opposed
Yeah,
totally.
as opposed to some of my songs which have so many moving parts. This one just is it's a great sort of Stonesy rocker, and it just sort of we just sort of bashed it out, and then we're like, that's it. Sounds good. All right.
Yeah, this is one I've had kicking around for many years, and like I said, I'm happy to really have it be finally recorded, and that you guys really breathed so much new life into it. And yeah, it's fun. I think it's nice. It's a little bit of a change of pace from a lot of our other songs, and I think just adds to the depth of kind of, for me at least, the music.
To me, Diego's bass line is deep and groovy, and I actually sing the bass line, I think, more than I sing the lyrics sometimes when we're playing it. And it definitely is one of my favorite songs to play live, too, just because it is kind of that up-tempo rockin' groove.
You know, my favorite part in the song is, Alex, I'm wondering if this might even be a mistake, is when we come out of the chorus, the first chorus, into like the post-chorus part, you go back to the hi-hats, which I think you maybe didn't mean to do that,
Yeah.
but I love that because it reminds me so much of Charlie Watts. I mean, it's such a Charlie Watts thing to just go back to the hi-hats, you know, on that part, you know, that part always gets me so stoked. I think we recorded 2 takes of it, and we were trying to decide which one was preferable. And Diego, you said that one sounded like a Boz Scaggs version of the song. So we decided to go with the other one.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Slims.
Your
right?
rock can be a little too straight-laced sometimes.
Well,
It's great.
I'm really happy with how it came out. So I think we should just give it a listen.
All right, fuck it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sitting by the TV just waiting for the phone to ring. I turned the volume down, but still I can't hear a thing. Baby, I've been waiting for you all day. I know you're doing fine, but baby, I'm not okay. No way. So why you always trying to break my heart when I'm so in love with you? Why you always trying to break my heart when I'm so in love with you? Pull out my records and play them all night long. Open up the bottle and sit here, try to write you a song. You know I'm just that way.
Well, for the next
Nice.
song, White Lines Hypnotize, this is a rare song where I intentionally set out to write a particular type of song. I intentionally set out to write a 3/4 country song, which I never write that way. I mean, the way songs come to me is they just come to me out of nowhere, and it's just like a radio playing in my head, and I try and get it down to my phone as fast as possible. But this one was where I literally sat down and said, okay, I'm going to try and write a country song. That's where this one came from.
I think it's my favorite song on the album.
Oh, nice.
Honestly,
Nice.
it's really lush, and I mean, you guys know the country kind of stuff is really near and dear to me. So it's really fun to do that, and also it was a really new experience for me, kind of playing this kind of music and not being like the singer. It's like so much more fun to just get to kind of have this song come to you, and for me at least, and just get to kind of play music on it, you know?
Yeah, the pedal steel is perfect, and it
Yeah,
very
it's really
complements it
beautiful.
really well.
I don't realize how hard hitting it is musically until the sort of last note kind of decays. And then it's kind of like, wow, the kind of like the silence is, you know, it's a real contrast that, I mean, I think is a real testament to the songwriting and the arranging and the performances to do that without it feeling overbearing.
You know, it's like even if nobody ever hears this or watches this, which is probably the case, for me, it's really great to get together with you guys and talk about it. You know, after the fact, you know, we started it, you know, back in May of last year or April,
Yeah.
I guess we went and
April.
recorded basic tracks, and then I tried to scramble to get all the vocals done before I left on a long business trip where I was gone for almost 3 months, and did a bunch of overdubs there in my hotel room. And then came back and did more overdubs over that summer, and then went away for another long business trip over the winter, and finished most of the mixing in my hotel room. And then because of this pandemic thing, was able to actually finally really finish it off and get all the keyboard parts that I wanted to add and all the vocal parts that I wanted to add, and so it all worked out.
Well, it sounds great.
Well.
Yeah,
I was thinking the
mixing
same
is
thing.
really
It's
awesome.
it's been nice to actually just sit down and talk about the album now that it's final,
Yeah.
with you guys.
Absolutely.
All right. I guess I'm gonna hit stop on my thing then.
All right, you guys. I gotta go pee.
All right, guys. Have a good weekend. See ya. Bye. Leave.
White lines hypnotized in the darkness of the highway. White lines don't hypnotize me. Tonight I need to get through. There's a feeling I get when I'm on the road for days, driving all night. Memory slips away. It seems like a year, though my book says 5 days. Those hypnotized